Welcome to Preceptor Orientation. It's wonderful to have you as a preceptor for the Spring Nutrition Care Placements for our undergraduate and Masters of Nutrition and Dietetics students. This is the first placement for students in these programs. UBC Vancouver is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Musqueam territory and all the people who have lived on Musqueam land were around thousands of years before UBC was built. The photo you see here is a carved post, which was carved by Musqueam artist Brent Sparrow Jr. in celebration of UBC's centennial in 2016. It represents the origin story of the Musqueam people. And if you're interested in learning more, you can take a look at the link in white on the slide. I'm joining today from the unceded territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. By the end of today's orientation, we hope that you can walk away with a clear sense of who the UBC Dietetics undergraduate team and Masters of Nutrition and Dietetics team are, as well as an introduction to the program's vision, mission, values in the context of practice education. What the placements will look like for you as a preceptor and for our students, including learning outcomes for the placements, how students are evaluated, and the weekly classes that they'll attend with UBC. We'll also talk about what will happen next after today's session. There are now 2 dietetics programs at UBC. We have the long-standing undergraduate dietetics program, as well as the new Masters of Nutrition and Dietetics called the MND. Students from both programs will be in nutrition care placements this spring. These nutrition care placements will be the first placements for all of the students during their program at UBC. Regardless of the program they're in, they will be doing the same activities and have the same learning outcomes. So everything we're talking about today applies to both students in the undergrad and the MND program. And we'll talk a bit more about the 2 programs shortly. Kafka, Ali Browse, Anna Briscoe, and myself are here today. Ali and I work with the undergraduate students, and Anna works with the MND students. In addition, we have Kara Vogt and Gordon Lee on our team, also working with the undergraduate students. As educators with the dietetics program at UBC, we are also course instructors for the dietetics practice education courses, including the nutrition care placement that you will be precepting for this spring. So ultimately, there's 5 of us as your direct contacts for anything to do with placement planning and student activities or performance during their placements with you. The UBC Dietetics program is committed to advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion for the program and for our students and ultimately the dietetics profession. This is a picture of some of our dietetic students who are currently in the undergraduate class of 2024. And they're a reminder of the community of wonderful and talented students that we get to work with and learn from in the program. We are all coming to precepting with personal, social, and structural biases, some of which are unconscious. I wanted to mention this in order to recognize that who we are and our journey of life experiences will very likely influence our perspective and approach to precepting. We've had 2 equity, diversity, and inclusion consultants review our dietetics program. We have made substantial changes to almost every aspect of our program to try to enhance fairness and address some of the inequities in the processes that we had. There's always a lot more work to do, and we're certainly not finished. For some perspective, from a practice education placement perspective, more than 1/3 of our students have circumstances that influence where and how they do their placements. And this is an important reflection of the varied lives, experiences, and abilities of our students. We have a policy in the program called Respectful Learning Environments. And in that policy, we define respectful learning environments as those that are welcoming to participants with diverse lived experiences, actively anti-racist, and committed to improvement. These environments are free from all forms of discrimination, bullying, or harassment. The program takes concrete steps to encourage and enable respectful learning environments in all program activities. We wanted to share this policy with you, and we also talked to our students about it during their orientation. So we welcome you to review the policy as we will be upholding it throughout practice education, and we expect students and preceptors to honor this in the way that they engage with each other. The policy defines and interprets an understanding of respectful learning environments and actions that can be taken in the event that you or a student observes or experiences mistreatment with regards to program activities. So when you registered for this preceptor orientation, we asked you to complete a survey to indicate topics you have learned about or done training on, as well as topics you're interested in learning more about. We wanted to share the results with you, as this is helpful information for us to know in order to help identify education session opportunities and priorities in the future, as a way for you and the students to feel more prepared for educational environments that are supportive and inclusive. And you can see the results from the survey there. The UBC Dietetics program has a vision and mission statement as well as core values, and they all provide a foundation for the program's commitment to advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion as it relates to the program's vision of inspiring learners to advance dietetic practice in food systems. Our core values are justice, integrity, inclusion, collaboration, and community focus. And together they drive our approach to program planning, delivery evaluation, and community engagement. And you can find these on our website as well. I wanted to make specific mention of the use of personal gender pronouns. And we want to explicitly mention that students may share their pronouns with you and that you ask that you please respect and correctly use your students' pronouns. Some students may introduce themselves and directly share their pronouns, but many students may not. It is a privilege to not have to worry about which pronoun someone is going to use for you based on how they perceive your gender. Failing to respect someone else's gender identity can and will dramatically impact their experience in their placement and likely beyond. We've shared some examples here of how you might want to consider inviting students to comfortably share their own gender pronouns. However, there could also be many reasons why someone may not want to share their pronouns, which is also their choice. Options in that case is to use their name in place of a pronoun or use they, them for anyone who has not explicitly shared their gender identity. We've also included 2 resources for you if you're interested in learning more or taking a course related to Intro to Gender Diversity, which allows you to explore key terms and concepts about gender diversity, barriers that gender diverse people commonly face, and some strategies to create accessible and affirming services. I wanted to mention some terminology to clarify so that hopefully you have a good understanding of what Allie, Anna, and I are going to be talking about when we use these words. We're no longer using the term internship. Instead, we're using the term practice education. The reason for this is that students are actually in UBC courses with specific learning outcomes, a syllabus, and assignments, and they get graded during practice education. So it's meant as a progressive learning experience, and students are in a learning environment to prepare them for entry to practice. So the time students spend with you, they are actually called placements or practice education placements, and each placement is 6 weeks long. You won't hear the term modules or rotations anymore. And a reminder of the program structure. This is the structure for the undergraduate dietetics program. You can see the green arrow on the slide. This is where the undergraduate students are in the program right now that you will be taking in your placements. They've just finished 3rd year of their degree, which is their 1st year in the dietetics program. And the practice education course they are doing with you is called Practice Education, Introduction to Nutrition Care. And it has a course code of FNH 381 in case you hear us or students referencing that course code. So for reference purposes, if you're interested in knowing what courses students have completed before coming to you in their placement, we've listed them here. You'll now be hearing from Anna.
Hello, I'm Anna Briscoe. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the master's program. So as you can see, it's just over 2 years long. And so similarly to the undergrad, this is their first practice education experience. The course code is there as well. Who knew 57? Oh, that's wrong, 579. And there's actually 2 placements as part of this course, but you're the first placement, which is nutrition care. And they'll also be starting their capstone projects, which if people have questions about that, they can contact me afterwards. Next slide. And then in terms of the courses that M&D students have done, they're just doing their 1st year of the program. And some of their classes are joint with the undergrad, which have some additional alternative assignments. So you can see those there. They also have a research methods class with the thesis program human nutrition students. And then there's some courses that are M&D only. And you can see that they're very, very similar topics to the undergrad. Yeah, and you can learn more website. So we wanted to go through a little bit of the common questions and to include the FAQs so that you'll be able to answer those. If you have other questions and like to hear from us, you can contact Ali or Tamara for undergrad and myself for M&D. So further ado, we'll go to the first question. So some people might have questions about the difference between the undergrad and the master's degree student placements. And essentially, they're very, very similar. They have the same performance indicators, which means that there's the same practice education expectations. We might have different policy numbers, but they're essentially the same policies and the same learning outcomes. There are slight differences just in terms of scheduling. So the M&D is full-time from May through August, whereas undergrad is just May, June, with August off, or July, August off. And then some of the Friday-led sessions will have slightly different topics and assignments. And the key features of this first nutrition placement are really just to be an introductory experience early in the program. This is responding to feedback that we've had over the years. Additionally, we want them to really just practice skills, and it's likely going to be more observational of preceptors, but then and the team members more than our previous model. The focus is really on a supportive and safe learning environment. This is really about our philosophy and explicitly planning that needs to be done for the placement. The preceptors play a huge role in how they set the stage with students and interact with them. And establishing safety helps students to take more risk with their learning, not risk with patients, and be more willing to try new things outside of their comfort zones, to, maybe to be wrong, to admit areas of improvement or development. And then the other part is just really a shared teaching and evaluation roles between the preceptors and UBC. So we'll be much more involved in placements and have a more active role in setting the expectations and additional assignments to evaluate the learning outcomes. We split the class into cohorts so we can be more involved with students and preceptors. And so what are the competencies that need to be met? So these are the learning outcomes for all year 3 placements. We took the national ICDEP document, which has 42 practicum competencies and 146 performance indicators. We grouped and condensed those items into a list of 7 learning outcomes. And so students and preceptors will evaluate, student performance based on these 7 statements. Obviously, year 3 the first placement is not intended to address all of the practice indicators. Students will progress to that by the end of the program. The 7 learning outcomes you hear capture 57 ICDEP PIs. And we chose these ones specifically. It seemed like a manageable number and a realistic scope for early learning in the program. So what will students be doing during these placements? So the students will be on site with you from Monday to Thursday. They'll not be in placements on Fridays, as they'll attend class with us UBC instructors that day. Obviously, except for the first 2 weeks. The Monday, May 15th is orientation, and then Monday, May 22nd is a stat holiday for Victoria Day. So the student time with you is set up by weekly activities that are integrated into course syllabus. There's lots of room for customization based on where you work and what you do in your job. Things like the review of patient-client records is obviously a very important part of nutrition assessments, and they definitely should do that. But there's not an expectation that students do documentation or charting in these placements. So we'll definitely do that in future placements, but this, because it's the introduction, we just want them to focus on those assessment skills. And you can absolutely share with them how you do documentation, as this can definitely improve their year 4 or next year course learning. But there's no need to formally teach or evaluate this skill in this placement. So this is some introduction of what students will be doing in these placements as a quick reference slide. It's broken down in more detail in the course syllabus, which we're going to go through shortly. Students are expected to leave this piece and to communicate with you what's expected of them each week. And we'll be going over this with students during their orientation day on May 15th. So that leads well into what are the expectations for students? The first expectation is they be self-directed. They're really focused on gaining applied nutrition assessment skills. And in terms of evaluation, they will initiate and lead the formal evaluation process, which we'll get into a little bit later. And also, students will participate in some placement activities in pairs and some things individually. And so then what are the expectations for you as preceptors? We are your point people for any student performance concerns. And so let us know if there's any issues. So really your expectations are to support student learning, encourage that self-directedness, also to directly observe students practicing their skills. It's very important, to share feedback throughout the placement, obviously not just in the formal evaluation process, but really throughout the placement so that students can improve and reflect on their performance. And we'll let you know, that again, going to the contributing the learning outcomes evaluations that students will lead. And then we're splitting the class into 5 groups with 1 instructor each, so we can provide you with more support. And we'll let you know which one of us is your point person on day 1 of the placement. We'll be emailing all the preceptors so that you know who to contact with any questions or for support.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Allie. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on what Anna introduced in terms of what students are going to be doing during the placement. So I'm going to go through the weekly schedule and review some of the activities students are going to be doing week by week. And all of this information can be found on the course syllabus, which is available on our website as well. And students can absolutely share that with you as well. And students are expected to review the weekly schedule ahead of time and to communicate their goals as they relate to learning activities and learning outcomes as well. It can be really helpful to protect some time in week 1 and 2 to really map out placement time and any important learning activities that students want to complete during their placement time. Okay, let's take a little bit of a journey through the course. So we're going to start with week 1 here too. And just a reminder, students are with you Monday to Thursday, and they're with us on Fridays. And except for week 1, on Monday, they're going to have their first day with us to do some general orientation. So their first placement day with you is going to be Tuesday, May 16th. So during their placement days in week 1 with you, they should have some time for students to do some orientation activities. Our goal is that they will come to you doing most of their onboarding activities, like any specific requirements for the organization to be ready to be there. They should have done all of those before they get to you. But general orientation to the placement setting and some of the people you work with and your roles and responsibilities, that can be done in weeks 1 and week 2. In week 1, they also should be focused on just really getting to know your site and your role, meeting with other team members, doing some job shadowing, and then also starting to complete their first nutrition assessment. The students will have a mini assignment, which includes a guide to help them walk through their first nutrition assessment. And they can start this in the first week, but it's due in week 2 to share with us. And we'll do some reflection activities and work with them during UBC-led time as well. And then again, just to clarify, students are really working on their assessment skills. And so they could practice their charting, but it's not an expectation or something that we're evaluating them until their later practice education placements. Okay, week 2. Week 2, we also have Monday as a stat holiday, so they'll miss that day. So then in their placement days, they should continue to make sure that they've completed all of their orientation. They also are directed to connect with a food service manager or department to really observe the food service operations at the site there too. This could be for half a day or a full day. And it's really an important activity to help them understand how the health system and dietetic services work complementary together. They also should be starting to practice skills related to their placement learning outcomes, including working on their nutrition assessments and communication skills. You can give students lots of time to work on each assessment, and they can work together or independently if desired. Um, Students will need to complete their first nutrition assessment by Thursday of this week using the guided form that they have from us as well as part of their assignment 1. And then week 3. So again, students are continuing to work on conducting nutrition assessments and their assessment skills. They should also start thinking about initiating their placement and evaluation process. They will fill out a 2-page evaluation form and send it to you to discuss in a meeting. And I'm going to elaborate on the evaluation approach a little bit later on in this session. Also in week 3, students are encouraged to try to arrange a meeting with other interprofessional team members. They could shadow them, they could do an informational interview, just depending on the preference and availabilities of these team members. This is intended to be a fully student-led process, and so preceptors shouldn't have to take on kind of making those connections and setting that up too. And it's an important part of students just understanding all the roles of different team members within the healthcare context. Students can also observe preceptors providing care. They can, of course, do this earlier in their placement, but we have a prompt here in week 3, really after students have been orientated to the sites to really get into understanding the full nutrition care process as well. And then on to week 4. Again, so there's a reminder that students need to complete their midpoint evaluation by the end of week 4. They should review the completed form and with you and ask for feedback from you too in terms of their progress. And then they will submit it to us at UBC as well. You probably need at least 30 to 45 minutes to meet with each student to review their evaluation forms. There's also a prompt in week 4 for students to just do some reflection upon equity and cultural safety and really synthesize their learning from some workshops that they've had in class as well too and submit that to UBC. And then again, they're continuing to practice and build skills and collect some feedback from preceptors on their progress as well. And then in week 5, there's a prompt here for students to do some peer observation and collect feedback from each other on their nutrition assessments. They can, of course, do this earlier in their placement as well too. And it is a good way to free up some preceptor time. But we do find that students are probably more capable of giving good feedback to each other once they've been in the placement for a couple of weeks to really understand their own skills and what's expected of them as well too. And then there's also a prompt in week 5 for them to set up their end of placement evaluation meeting as well. And then on to week 6. So this is the final week. They're wrapping things up. They're obviously continuing to build their skills and practice their nutrition assessments. And then there should be time for them to do their final evaluation meeting with you. Again, that's one-on-one with each student. And they use the same form that they use for the midpoint evaluation, and that one is student-led. And again, there is a prompt here too, but throughout the weeks, if you ever have any concerns about a student or just questions about expectations, then please reach out to us at UBC. You can reach out to their primary instructor and we can talk you through that as well. And then students are with us on Fridays for a Zoom class. We do it virtually because we do have students around the province doing placements. Their scheduled class time with us is from 9:30 to 12. And we're going to cover a variety of topics with them during our time together. Class time is primarily used to cover topics and competencies that are helpful to orientate students to specific aspects of their learning and applied experience. and ensure that we have opportunities to meet some of the harder to achieve competencies and placements as well too. So we have some of the examples of topics that we're going to cover on Friday classes. Here we're going to do some orientation review. We're going to talk about the healthcare systems a bit more. We're going to review some documenting and charting styles. We have some topics about weight inclusive practice and decolonizing dietetic practice. Students will also be doing a student-led case debrief to their peers as well. And we've got some other topics, including things like dealing with difficult feelings as a clinician and reflective practice as well. And then in addition to all the learning that students are going to be doing with you in placements, they will also have a couple assignments, and assignments are intended to help us assess some competencies related to their ICDEP as well. They are submitted to UBC course instructors at defined dates, and we mark them and provide them feedback as well. Students can use placement time to work through their assignments when appropriate, and they're prompted to just inform you about the assignments they're working on during the first week of their placement as well. So you'll see some examples of the placement or assignments that students are doing on the screen here. They have this early nutrition assessment assignments they submit, case debrief. They're going to do a personal reflection on health equity, and then their evaluation forms as well. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the evaluation process. On the screen here, you can see the student performance evaluation form. This is actually just part of the form. Cut down, you can find the whole evaluation form. A sample of it is on our program website as well too. And this is the same one that we used during the year 5 placements this year. So some of you may be familiar with this form already, or if you did a spring placement last year as well. If you're not familiar with this form, there are some key differences from our previous evaluation forms that we use. So some of the key differences are there's no more ratings or rankings of performance. There is a prompt on here, though, that there's a mid-evaluation meeting and then a final evaluation meeting that they do, and they review and document how the students have demonstrated each of the competencies that they're asked to do for the form. And then again, they submit it to us at the end. We will work with students on their Friday sessions to make sure that we're preparing them to meaningfully complete these forms. And they also have some sample evaluation forms that they can use to prompt them to make sure that they fully understand how to use it. In terms of your role in the placement evaluation, you will be asked to review this form with the students during both their midpoint and their final evaluations. And then you'll notice on the very front page in a red box, there's a prompt for you to get in touch with us directly if you have any concerns with the student's performance. And then we'll work together with yourself and us at UBC and the students to just determine next steps to support the student. We do have additional forms and processes that we can use if there are any questions or concerns about a student's performance, so that we can help them ensure that they can progress towards meeting the placement learning objectives. So as we wrap up, what happens next? Right now, we're working on making sure that students are onboarded to be able to come on site to start their spring placements. We're working on orientation logistics for getting them prepared for the class as well. For yourself, you can expect to hear from students 1 to 2 weeks in advance of their placement. So they will reach out and introduce themselves to you and ask you about where they should meet on their first day, and maybe a couple other logistical questions. During their placements, again, we will do some orientation with them. They will have classes with us on the Fridays. and we will contact you in week 1 so that you know who your primary contact is with UBC. And then just a note in here, many of you should have received our initial email about orientation as well, but a prompt that we are going to have a more informal preceptor check-in on Friday, June the 2nd. And this is really just an opportunity to connect with us and with each other and just share some of our experiences. We will not be having like a formal presentation, but mostly just be available to answer your questions around the placement and see what other supports that we can provide you. And then just a wrap up here too. So, during our live session, we'll have some opportunities for our preceptors to just pose some questions and answer them. If you're watching the recording, then we would really just encourage you to reach out to us directly if we have not answered your questions, if you have things that are still outstanding around your upcoming placement and being a preceptor. Again, we really appreciate you taking this time. It's such a valuable part of student learning. And so hopefully this orientation has helped kind of answer some of your questions, but if not, then please reach out to us as well. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight a couple resources and references that we've kind of made mention to as well. We'll post this online so you can find the direct links as well too. But on our website, you will find some resources that are hopefully pretty helpful for you. So we have a practice education overview with kind of some guides and links for preceptors as well. You'll also be able to find the course syllabus and the course evaluation forms as well. We also, on our website, there's a whole tab for our policies and procedures. And then if you're curious about learning more about ICDEP and some of the entry to practice competencies for dietitians, then we would encourage you to just explore the ICDEP document in a bit more detail as well. And that's it. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this recording. Again, reach out to us anytime if you do have questions for us.